What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Going Live podcast. It is your host, Max Going, and it is a special episode, to say the least. Not only are we joined by the one and only Kyle Siegel, our MMA analyst, but we are here for a very special reason. But first and foremost, Kyle, welcome back. We have not spoken since the last Bellator event that we covered. How are you? How's things been?
I'm doing well, UFC's been great. Bellator's been great. We got PFL coming back. But more importantly, one has just been giving us these banger cards. And now that we are blessed, enough to not only interview a lot of these fighters, we can actually cover in a podcast,
Absolutely. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. And, he just said it, but this is one of the biggest MMA events of all time. It is definitely the biggest MMA event not MMA event. This is the biggest, mixed martial arts. It's all these different branches of mixed martial arts on one card. And it's definitely the biggest card and most important card of ONE FC's history. It's the 10-year anniversary. And boy, are they celebrating with a bang. There's no prelims. There's no such thing as prelims on this one. It is 3 parts, 10 hours long, and it is broken down into 3 sections of the night. You got part 1 begins at 1 a.m. Eastern time. So all the West Coast people, make sure you set your timers. If you're going to watch this thing, it's going to be starting at 10 p.m. West Coast time. 9 fights on part 1. You go to part 2. That starts at 5 a.m. Eastern time. 5 fights on the part 2. Then you go to the grand finale, part 3. That begins at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and it is a 6-fight section of the night with some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts, not only MMA, but Muay Thai, along with a very special fight that we will obviously get to later on. But let's start it off at part 1. And boy, do they know how to get your attention quick. If you're not a big ONE fan, you're just kind of tuning in because of the publicity of this event. You are getting a great start. The lightweight Muay Thai fight. Kyle, tell us a little bit about this first one.
Yeah, I mentioned it to you before the podcast. I've been following Nieky Holzken before we were even signed by ONE Championship. He's got that, he beat Cosmo Alexander twice. And Cosmo has probably one of the most famous knockouts in MMA where, he broke Sage Northcutt's jaw with that one punch. And Nieky just obliterated him. So, this could headline itself with this fight. But he's one of the best kickboxer Muay Thai fighters on the planet. And the fact that this is only, the third to last fight on their part 1 is insane.
And it's just a great testament of how this card is built. It is built from the ground up. It starts with a banger. It ends with a banger. But tell us a little bit more about that Nieky Holzken fight.
Yeah, so Nieky Holzken is 14-1 just as a boxer. And his kickboxing Muay Thai record is so pristine. The only losses he has is to the lightweight champ. So what we're seeing is, him. He's really almost the champion in that division if there wasn't one person there. And, he's fighting Sinsamu Klinmi, who isn't well known, but he's an 8-2 pro Muay Thai record, has knockout power. So this fight will be incredible.
So as you mentioned, Nieky Holzken is been dominating recently, and he is the big favorite in this fight as well. Before we move on, anything else you want to talk about with this one?
No, let's get to that submission grappling.
Absolutely. And let's just recap it because I'll probably edit this out. But let's move on. You talk about Muay Thai fights. Great way to start the card. You move on to probably an even more interesting matchup here. You got the double champ in ONE MMA in a submission grappling competition. Tell us about this unique one as well.
There's very rare times you can get this excited about a submission grappling fight. De Ridder has shown he's not only one of the best grapplers in the world as a black belt jiu-jitsu artist, but he's one of the best MMA guys. He took Ong Lasong's both of his belts after, Ong, we interviewed him too, saying, we thought he was going to keep both his belts for, maybe 5 years longer. And he's fighting Andre Galvao, who, if anybody in the jiu-jitsu company out there, the market, he's just a legend. I mean, Galvao has like 157 wins, 27 losses. Half his wins, 73 of them to be specific, were against black belts. And I mean, he's up in the names of Gordon Ryan, but De Ridder is 15-0 in MMA, has 13 finishes. And all I could say is, I mean, De Ridder is such a dark horse in this. It doesn't really mean anything. He's not losing any belts, but a grappling competition against one of the best jiu-jitsu artists in the world. You're one's poster boy, double champ. I mean, this fight is going to be great.
And it's just that's a great example of the unique card here. I mean, obviously, two legends in their own right, but now they'll face off in almost an exhibition match, but with the whole world watching. So that's going to be absolutely unreal as well. Anything you want to talk about before we move on to the featherweight kickboxing world championship Grand Prix?
No, I think this submission grappling match is going to set the bar for one to come, because I mean, they hired Gordon Ryan, a bunch of these jiu-jitsu guys, and we asked Chatri, the CEO himself, he can do it in own grappling card one day, and a lot of people don't tune into grappling jiu-jitsu, but when it comes in one championship and you have the name behind it, they're really changing the game when it comes to hiring jiu-jitsu artists and MMA company.
And yeah, it's you said it there. It's just unbelievable what they're doing, the direction they're going with this company, the branches that they are branching out. It's very unique. Speaking of unique, we have submission grappling, we got Muay Thai. Let's follow that up. Why not follow that up with the featherweight kickboxing Grand Prix? Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so we're actually blessed. We got to interview both of these fighters. Chingiz Alizov, maybe not well known because he's not from Thailand. He's a Georgian fighter out of Belarus for Sidichai, who's just a Thailand legend. And the difference is, I mean, Chingiz is an absolute animal when it comes to knocking out people in the first round. And Sidichai has like 127 wins and 32 losses in Thailand, which, at such a young age is crazy. But Chingiz is very rare in this because he's 58-5. 36 of his wins came by knockout. And that's not even including all the knockouts in his hundreds of amateur kickboxing bouts. So this is going to be a really big, testament for both these fighters. And the winner faces the champ, which we have later on at part 3.
And, this is going to be obviously it is the main event of part 1, but in my estimation, this will probably be the most exciting fight to watch. This is probably the most equally matched, if anything. I mean, if you're going to talk about equally matched with Sidichai, it's you can't really put a long list of people, but they've both looked really good.
This is a fight. If you're an MMA fan, these are the fights that you can tune in and say, okay, this is why people watch kickboxing and Muay Thai. Because if you like striking, which I know a lot of MMA fans do, I mean, they're going to just try to take each other. They're going to take each other's heads off, and you're going to see striking of levels beyond, what you see on some of these. I hate to say it, but some of these striking level you see in one is way beyond what you watch on a UFC fight night.
Yeah, and obviously, you're talking about a kickboxing championship. The striking is obviously the only aspect of that fight, but you're right. You have a great point. If you actually watch these fights, I mean, these guys are throwing kicks to the legs, kicks to the body, kicks to the head. I mean, and they're blocking it with their own legs. I mean, it's just, if you've never watched a kickboxing fight and you're just tuning in for MMA, this is just a perfect way to get your feet wet there. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that. This is a
and
crazy
one is
fight.
such a great job because a lot of their kickboxers are Muay Thai fighters too. But one is so good at just saying, hey, this is where you're going to fight. This is what you're going to do. And I'm sure each of these guys could excel at Muay Thai. But the fact that, I'm so entertained at just a kickboxing world championship Grand Prix is, and we're only at part one, so
Exactly. We're already in part one, but let's move on to part two. As I said, this starts at 5 a.m. Eastern, and this one starts with a bantamweight kickboxing championship fight that will, we throw the word legend around a lot. There's some legends in this fight. Talk to us about this one.
yeah. So right away, I mean, we get into part two. If you've ever watched one championship, you'll probably see a commercial of them just with Capitan. He's very famous in Thailand, very famous in Muay Thai, kickboxing, and he's got 145 wins and only 40 losses. Maybe it sounds weird because you have 40 losses, but if you've been fighting since you're 17, 18 years old, it's a pretty crazy record. And I mean, he's a pure just knockout precision striker. And you'll once again, see some striking that you don't usually see in MMA. You're not going to see this in Bellator. You're not going to see in UFC. You're going to see some leg kicks. You're going to see some strikes where they're not even trying to get points. They're just trying to injure you, break your leg. And that's what I think we love about ONE, because they have fighters like this that are just on such a higher level. It kind of reminds me about Khabib's wrestling. Maybe it's not a good comparison because Khabib was so legendary, but it's the same type of striking where they're so undefeated because they just know how to pick apart their opponents with leg kicks, faking strikes, things like that. And meanwhile, ONE is such a big Asian country. He's fighting Hiroki Akamoto, who's 25-1, and he's barely even tasted defeat. His only defeat was a decision.
Yeah, this is it's be a great fight. Title on the line here, correct?
Title on the line, and Chatri's such a genius at ONE. He puts the bantamweight kickboxing and Muay Thai championship back to back because he knows, he has some of the best bantamweights in the world, and both of these championships are just gonna be bangers. Akamoto is a pure underdog, but he's a sleeper in this fight because he's very aggressive. He can knock you out in the first round. And supporting Japan has very rare kickboxers that can do what he does, other than Tenshu Nasuwaka, who will probably be in one championship in the next year.
Yeah, so it's just a banger. Can't wait for that. And then let's move on to the main event of part two, unless you want to talk anything else about this one.
No, let's move on because they put bantamweight after bantamweight.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What do you like about this Muay Thai championship?
So when you have a champ who has 262 wins,
262.
There's something behind that. Yeah, Nong O. I mean, he only goes by his first name. Usually, I won't even get into pronouncing his last name, but
Tough.
He'll pick you apart for 5 rounds or knock you out. And his last 2 wins mainly were against some of the best top pound for pound fighters in Thailand, and he knocked them both out in the first round. And in Muay Thai, that's not the easiest said than done. It's 5 rounds every fight, and this guy is just knocking you out in the first round. So that means he's actually making a statement. But the best thing I love about this fight is he's fighting someone who is so unknown you can't even find his Muay Thai record online. He's a Muay Thai knockout artist. He's called the Demolition Brazilian. And as I mentioned, I told Max before this, I couldn't even find his record online. But he's so well known that ONE has a article about how he could be the next champ. But it's one of those contradictions where you can't even find this guy's record online. So he's well known in the fact that he's an upcoming prospect, but you can't even find what this guy's done. All I was able to find is he's undefeated in ONE. He can knock you out with anything he touches you with. And that it's almost like he has nothing to lose because of that. He doesn't have the credibility that Nong O has. He doesn't have the 262 wins. Maybe he has 40 wins. Maybe he has 50 wins. But I can guarantee you the way this guy fights, he probably has 40 knockouts in those wins.
And that's exactly what ONE likes to bring. Main events that have knockout power, knockout potential. This one definitely falls under that category. So part 1, part 2, pretty good. The grand finale, it's even better. let's start off.
You got to pay for it though.
You do have to pay for it. This is a pay-per-view, but the other two are not, correct? That is actually something that's good to let the people know. The first two cards are available for free, correct?
Yes, they are, and you can view them on the Bleacher Report Live, or the easiest way. And if you're a One Championship fan, you want to get into it. The best thing about One, they don't charge you for any of these fights. This is the first one I will pay for. They give you everything for free. You have to usually wake up early, which you can bet we're going to do. We're pulling an all-nighter, drinking a few
Absolutely.
Celsiuses, get a box of pizza, and it's not something you want to miss, because this is almost like a double UFC pay-per-view. And you don't have to pay $80 for it. So
It's fantastic. But the first two you can watch on onefc.com, correct? And
yes, they'll send you the link. Usually it's on Bleacher Report Live,
okay.
or they'll do YouTube Live.
Love
But
it.
YouTube Live is awesome because guess what? You can pause it. If it's 5 a.m., you're getting ready to work, you can pause it.
That's perfect. Love to hear that. But as we said, the grand finale, part 3, pay-per-view only. And it is a pay-per-view for a good reason. 3 world title fights on the third part of the card, and some unique ones to say the least. But let's start off with the featherweight kickboxing championship.
Yeah, they fight the Grand Prix winner, and you have two people that just came off crazy knockouts. Super Bond just literally knocked out the best kickboxer they call to ever live on the planet. Somebody who Joe Rogan mentioned, somebody who, if you just look up Giorgio Petrosian, Super Bond just knocked him out with a head kick in the first round, which you rarely see. This is one of those things where you think about, like, when Mayweather fought McGregor, if McGregor had knocked him out, or, if Canelo got knocked out. That's the type of upset Super Bond just had. And he's got 112 wins, 34 losses. And he just knocked out, number 1 pound for pound Giorgio Petrosian. But he's fighting Murat Grigorian, who is a demolisher and has 65 wins, 11 losses. And half his wins were literally knockouts in the first or second round.
That's wild.
So both these guys are just going to go for each other's throat. And just to piggyback off, like, if you're an MMA fan, this is probably my favorite fight on this whole card, because you're going to see some striking that, I don't care how many years you have it in kickboxing, boxing, even if you're just a pure boxing fan, you're going to see some moves that you don't even know how to make, or just some timing that you see, the way they set up, the way they fake punches, kicks, things like that. And it's the fact that these guys are going to go face somebody from part 1 is just insane. And that's how the amount of depth One has in the featherweight kickboxing division, because I could promise you, if these guys had grappling experience, you could all throw them in any of the big MMA leagues. That's how good they are.
Yeah. And that's why they're on the third part of the card. These are some of the best in the world. And it's going to be, as you said, this is up there with Fight of the Night potential. So very excited for this one as well. And let's move on though to Flyweight World Championship. This is MMA, correct?
It's MMA.
Finally. Woo! Finally, we get some MMA here. Tell us about this.
I don't know how much MMA we're going to see, but you got Adriano Moraes, fights with the best in the world at ATT, American Top Team. Has that famous knee knockout on the ground of Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson never, even with this loss to Henry Cejudo, never looked out of place as much as he did against Moraes. And, Moraes literally just made a name off that one victory. He's 19-3. That's a pretty good record. And he's the cream of the crop of not only the one flyweights, but I think he's solidifying himself as the best in the world. And he's fighting an upcoming prospect who's on a 5-round or a 5-win streak.
And that's the best part, I think, in my opinion, about One, because you talk about, a lot of people talk about Bellator, Scott Coker will say, "Oh, we have the best light heavyweights in the world," and the UFC fans, "No, the UFC has the best light heavyweights in the world." We're talking about When you're talking about, excuse me, when you talk about flyweights, there's really no question about it. The best flyweights in the world compete at one. I don't think
100%.
I don't think I don't think anybody who actually follows MMA closely could really even argue it, because that's the real cream of the crop, as you said, in terms of fan favorites back in Asia. So the most popular flyweights go 2-1, and this is a great example of this. These could be the two best flyweights on planet Earth. So
yeah, and I mean, he's another person who comes from an Asian descent, which one loves. But this guy's 15-4, 5 wins in a row out of one people, and just he's almost looked unbeatable as well. And Moraes is going to try to make a statement because he needs to show everybody, hey, that win over DJ wasn't a fluke. I came here, to make my name. And we saw how big Adriano looked over DJ. And it's almost like, we're going to see what happens in this DJ Rodtang fight later on, because we could see, DJ versus Moraes 2, 3. That's how good this Adriano kid is.
And you mentioned the victory over DJ. We'll talk about DJ in a little bit here, but the win over DJ was from the grounded knees, which is something that isn't allowed in UFC. So obviously he wants to make this win to potentially fight him again. And as you said, kind of solidify that was no fluke. So before we move on to the most interesting fight in MMA history, let's talk about real quick, the sleeper fight for the evening. In your opinion, is which one?
Edward Folayang versus John Wayne Parr. And any kickboxing Muay Thai fans out there, John Wayne Parr has been doing this for longer, than anybody's been probably watching mixed martial arts. This guy's been a legend. This has literally been said it's his last fight. Nikki Holskin knocked him out really badly his last, and so it's great to see he's going to give it one more go, and he's not fighting someone who's just a Muay Thai artist. He's fighting Edward Folayang, who's actually usually competes in MMA. Edward Folayang is famous for almost knocking out Eddie Alvarez in the first round, breaking his leg. He got tapped out by him, but it was through the ground, it wasn't through strikes. And if you want to see some of the best kickers in the world, these guys, that's what you're going to see. Folayang can throw spinning back hooks, leg kicks as fast as you can, ever see a leg kick. And he's facing someone, John Wayne Parr, has been doing this for so many years, and it's his last fight. He's going to give it one last go.
That will be a good fight, and obviously that is the second fight on the third part of the card. So getting some legends in there before the title fight. And speaking of legends, we have not only two legends going against each other, but if you haven't heard, this is the most unique fight of all time. You have two separate legends from two separate branches of mixed martial arts going against each other in a mixed rules match. 2 rounds of Muay Thai, 1 and 3. 2 rounds of mixed martial arts, 2 and 4. This is insane. Kyle, try and walk us through this one, because who the hell knows what the hell is going to happen with this? This is so weird to me. Dana White claimed that this would never work. Nonsense. I'm so interested. I cannot wait. Break
DJ Johnson, if you watch some of his UFC fights, he looks like a pure Muay Thai artist on some of his fights.
Yeah.
He is so good on the feet. We just never have to see it because his wrestling is so good. Nobody could take it down. And I love how they were smart enough to give it Muay Thai round 1. I think that gives a better chance than Rodtang. It doesn't give DJ just that chance to take him down. We'll see what DJ's made of.
I don't mean to cut you off, but just so I don't lose that train of thought right there, I think that's a very important note. I think it is pretty smart to make the Muay Thai the first round, because if you're going to make a Muay Thai legend grapple, you can't have it when they're both at 100% energy. That won't work. And so I'm with you. Sorry, continue. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, good. And I think DJ is going to try to, show everybody that he's going to try to go for that first round knockout. I would not sleep on DJ trying to just take his head off, with some crazy ass flying knee or something like that.
Some
just
Muay Thai
something.
experts would say that's a bad idea. Continue. Continue.
But the way to think about it, I mean, DJ's still 30-4. He's only had one KO loss, He still lost a questionable, decision to Henry Cejudo. But Rodtang's only 24 years old with 267 wins. If you do the math of maybe like from 18 to 24, that's not, it's like almost like 45 wins a year.
I literally have probably have less Call of Duty Warzone wins in that span.
And how he does what he does, I don't know. But he's considered a GOAT because you see those famous videos of him taking damage, him punching himself, and he's still 24 and he knows how good he is. And I mean, Rodtang beat Jonathan Haggerty to a pulp. And Jonathan Haggerty, who we're grateful enough to interview, I thought he was one of the best in the world. Nobody could contest him. And Rodtang made it look easy. Rodtang was literally slapping his face when Haggerty was touching him. So I think this is going to be just a bananas first round. And second round, we'll see what happens. It's going to be tough for Rodtang, I hate to say, really stop DJ's takedowns because of DJ's skill. And we could also see DJ just kind of, make almost a show of this, in the second round, not even necessarily go for the takedown, but try to time a flying knee that he's done multiple times before and really show that, he's only shown us grappling because he's only had to grapple. That was the path of least resistance through the UFC and won. Nobody has the takedown defense, but I think he really wants to prove a point of his striking. But I think Rodtang is going to come out with just some very, very unorthodox striking in that first round to just kind of show DJ like I'm here to make a message.
And like if you really look at the fight and the way that it's built, you have a guy like Rodtang who he probably understands the danger that comes with a second round in general. And he also probably understands that this is really his toughest test in the business, having to fight someone with grappling rules. That's how dominant he's been. So, my thought here is I think DJ plays it smart. If he really wants to win, if he doesn't care about losing and he just wants to put on a show, then, who knows? But if he really cares about this win, I think he'll just kind of try and survive that first round. And Rodtang is the exact opposite. It's just going to go for the kill in that first round. Who knows? But if I'm just looking at it from an outside perspective, that seems like a very high probability. But regardless, this is the craziest thing ever, and I'm so excited.
Both are just the fact that they even came up with this,
right?
The fact that they picked these two fighters, I couldn't pick two flyweights or bantamweights in any other MMA division that could do something like this. And both have millions of views, followers, and this was basically, kind of the cap off the biggest mixed martial arts event we've ever seen. And if you try to disagree, this is the biggest mixed martial arts event you've ever seen. There's really no, maybe you don't have the MMA power you usually see, but you're going to see MMA entertainment all day long with some of these fighters. And especially with this fight, I have no idea what's going to happen. And, if I was a betting man, I would not want to be a betting man.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're addicted to betting, you might want to just sit this one out because not even me having advice. This is
I'll give you a meeting in Singapore, and luckily enough, we got invited to come to the fight in Singapore, but to do media, but I don't feel like going to jail for 10 years. So.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough travel day. But with that being said, you just mentioned, we mentioned a lot of non MMA bouts, but if you look at the card, there's one, two, three, four, five mixed martial arts fights on the first part. There is one, two, three mixed martial art fights on the second event. And then there's obviously that DJ fight, so maybe half a fight right there. But on the third one, there's one. So I mean, you're still getting, if you're an MMA fan, you're still getting a lot of MMA, but for the most part, you're getting the most elite fighters of their respective sport all around. So
And that's
and
what one represents, you know. We would love to cover all the MMA actual, you know, fights, but of
but these
course
are
we don't want to do
just
a 4-hour podcast.
yeah, and to be honest with you, these are just more important. These are the cream of the
These are more
crop.
important.
Yeah, these are the
Exactly.
top guys.
There's really not any time, you know, even when Glory Kickboxing was at its prima donna, like nobody was doing podcasts about it. No one even cared. Where 1X, you know, the full frontal point is, you know, what they have outside of MMA, which is awesome. You know, I think this is why they have so many fans across the world.
Absolutely, it's going to be amazing. But before we go, I do think it would be a good idea to talk about the actual main event of the evening, the final fight of the evening, the Atomweight World Championship. And I mean, you talk about dominance in the sport. These women dominate their sport. Talk to us a little bit about this one before we head out.
Yeah, you're talking about Angela Lee, the youngest champion ever in mixed martial arts, MMA, any big four, you know, of the leagues. She was 18 years old when she won a championship. And, you know, we actually got to interview her, luckily. You know, she comes from a background where Christian Lee, her brother, you know, is the lightweight title holder. Victoria Lee, her bigger sister, has also won a championship. And so she just comes from that family. And, you know, she beat Jing Ding Sing. I think I didn't pronounce that correctly, but, you know, we'll move on.
We're trying.
And,
We're trying.
you know, she beat her in a rear naked choke, kind of solidified herself as the next, you know, big thing in one. Angela Lee's been the face, but she's fighting someone who else is also the face of one, and Stan Fairtex. And she's just a Muay Thai striker. You know, she can also grapple. But this is such a very unique grappler versus striker type of fight. And you got Angelique 10-2 versus, you know, not or Stamp, who's 8-1. And both these women are cream of the crop in one. Both of these women are so good. It fights an atom weight, which, you know, maybe let's say the UFC doesn't have, but I could promise you both these women could go up to straw weight and
Easy.
solidify themselves in the top 15 UFC.
Easy.
That's how the good they are. There's a reason after all these men have fought that these women are now, you know, kind of solidifying this card as the best ever. Because when you
Yeah.
see both these girls fight, you see how good they are. And, you know, Angela Lee just being able to win a world championship at 18 years old, you know, now she's older, of course, but
Still, it's unbelievable. But break it down. So this is an MMA fight, correct?
it's an MMA fight. But you have
Angela
someone,
Lee is the MMA champion, correct?
yes, and
And
she's fighting
Stamp
basically
is the Muay
a
Thai champ.
Thailand fighter. Yep.
Wow. I didn't even know that. That's crazy. That
No, I'm
wow.
glad you mentioned that. I'm happy you mentioned it because
That's
that's
so
something
cool. So
a
this
lot
is
of people
kind of
wouldn't.
like DJ versus Rodtang, but it's just mixed martial arts.
And Stamp is actually a straw weight who only fights in atom weight right now because that's the division. You know, she really is in. If she was in any other division, she'd be a straw weight. But both these chicks are really small. You know, Stamp's I think 5'1". I think Angela's like 5'4". So they're very small, but you know, I wouldn't want to run into them in a parking lot dark at night. You know.
Yeah, no, they will. They'll head kick you pretty quick. The speed on the speed is going to be the real thing that stands out in my opinion with this fight. As you said, very small, but that the smaller they are, the faster they are. So this is going to be a great fight and another very interesting dynamic. You got two champions going against each other, two different branches of MMA under one rules. That's just fantastic. This whole card is just going to be an absolute legendary night. I cannot wait. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this baby up?
No, just you're not doing anything, you might as well stay up, watch it. It's free, the first two parts. Very rare times, do you not have to have a subscription or pay something to watch it. And I know we'll both be buying the pay-per-view.
100% on that one. Here's the funny thing. I got a fantasy baseball draft, my high roller, my big dynasty league on Saturday morning. I am pulling the most epic all-nighter into a draft of all time. I'm so excited, and I thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, look, we're not going to say anything, but hopefully there's like a 10% chance. I'll say this. There's a 10% chance that we get access to the post-fight Zoom link. So I'll just leave it at that. It doesn't look good right now, but you never know. Fingers crossed. If not,
can't fly to Singapore. And just so you guys know, that's why,
exactly.
We were blessed enough to get the immediate invite, but you got to be in Singapore. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have lads out here. So
everything for the week has been on site, but the post fight, they did mention some sort of Zoom link. So we're praying that turns out. But if not, we will see you here next time. Kyle, thank you again for being here, man. We will talk to you soon.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. And can't wait till tomorrow.
Cannot wait. And before we go, who are you rooting for between Rod Tang and DJ? Who are you rooting for? Not who you think you win. Who are you rooting for?
I am rooting for Rod Tang all the way.
I love that. I love that answer. That's a real answer right there. All right, buddy. We'll talk very soon. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, man.